Yo, what up? It's me, the resident bank emptier, and I bought a PlayStation Vita. Feels like everyone is getting a handheld. When I scroll through my YouTube feed, I swear half the videos I see are people talking about handhelds and why you should buy them. I never got a chance to own one, and today I'm going to show you definitively if owning a Vita is worth the money. So, why did I buy a Vita instead of the aforementioned devices? I think it really boils down to that the game library interests me. I'm already a big PlayStation collector, so having another PlayStation system to collect felt nice. Also, there's a good amount of homebrew for the Vita that lets you customize pretty much anything you'd want. And I was just curious as well to see how some sort of like emulation would work on this device. So why did I get a Vita Slim, you may ask? I decided to get the Vita Slim mostly because of the better battery life. The Vita Slim has the IPS screen instead of the OLED and has like a very slightly bigger battery. So with this system, you'll roughly get around 4 to 6 hours while playing. The Vita has a normal PlayStation button loadout, minus not having a physical L2 and R2 button. Instead, it has like these weird 4 touch buttons on the back that sometimes games use, and it also has a touchscreen, which is pretty nice. The Vita also comes with a built-in front and back camera, and to plug the Vita Slim into anything, you need to use a mini USB connector, which is trash. Now that I've explained the basic features, it's time to homebrew this bad boy. Now this isn't a tutorial, but I will go through the steps of what I did with my Vita. For my install process, I used the Vita.hacks guide, and it worked pretty well for me. So I will recommend that. First thing I did is I went to the jailbreak website, which you can just kind of open in your Vita browser, and unlocked my Vita. After that, I installed Henkaku and Vita Deploy. Henkaku is the custom firmware, and Vita Deploy lets you install custom firmware and help manage the Vita. It also comes with an application called Vita Shell, which gives you a custom file browser. It also gives you the ability to connect to your Vita through FTP, which is really useful. Next thing I did was I installed Enso, which keeps the homebrew running constantly every time you boot your Vita, so you don't have to re-enable it. I installed ITLS Enso, which lets us communicate with modern websites and services through the internet, which is interesting. I also blocked auto updates for obvious reasons. And through Henkaku, I enabled PSN spoofing and version spoofing. These features make it seem like the Vita is unmodded and helps us play things that need a specific PSN or software version that we obviously do not have. And with that, I'm fully homebrewed and it's time to install some things. First thing I set up was SD to Vita, which is a micro SD adapter that fits into the game card slot. This is useful because the storage for the Vita is very expensive. This lets you expand your storage up to 256 gigabytes. Not only that, but you can run backups and applications directly from the micro SD card. Everything from this point onward is being installed on the SD to Vita. The next thing I installed is a software called Adrenaline. Adrenaline modifies the official PSP emulator to run a custom firmware so you can boot into the PSP home menu, and that can be used to play PSP and PS1 backups as well. I'm honestly pretty impressed by this software. It was really easy to install, and it just runs PSP and PS1 games perfectly. There are no notes. Not only do the PSP and PS1 games run perfectly, at least to my eye, you can add graphics filtering, you can smooth the graphics, you can change the screen scale of both the PSP and PS1. And I think overall this is my favorite homebrew application on the Vita in total. It is just amazing. In my opinion, it might be the best way to play PS1 and PSP games on the go. Next thing I installed was an app called Better Homebrew Browser. This is just a hub for games, ports, emulators, and utility applications. Stuff to customize your Vita with. And under the same vein is a software called Auto Plugin 2, which lets you install custom Vita plugins for very specific features. For example, you could enable controller support for like the PS3, 4, 5, or whatever. Or you could download a plugin that lets you overclock your CPU and GPU and fine-tune that. They're both very interesting applications, and you can do a lot with them. The next homebrew application I installed is PKGJ, which allows you to install PS Vita, PSP, and PS1 backups directly to your PS Vita's live area. Now for this one, I only recommend downloading games that you own, or games that are essentially impossible to own. Games that are so highly priced and price charted the fuck out of. But whatever. You can just click download on any of these games and it'll download straight to your Vita. As for the last program, I downloaded RetroArch, which even has its own little Vita version, which is kind of nice. RetroArch is a front end for emulators, so you can use this to run all your emulators and emulated games. And I also downloaded a few emulators from the Better Homebrew browser, and we'll test those out a little later. Now that we've transitioned to live, Taylor, let's try out some of these games. First, I'm just going to try out one of my favorite games of all time, Ratchet and Clank. Just see how it runs. Most games will run at like 30 FPS at most. This is a handheld after all. An older one to boot. I kind of noticed going into the game that it's a little more delay. One thing you can do, you can go down here and then give it some overclockage. Let's do that real fast. Just see what it does. I'm not sure if that'll make it that much more smooth, but maybe a little bit. Same Ratchet and Clank, baby. Let's play for a little bit. Definitely feels a little different just because the Vita tiny. No tiny baby. If you're okay with 30 FPS, this is a decent way to play it, especially on the go. Real legitimate way to maybe do this would be on like the PlayStation Portal, maybe? Like, I don't know, is Ratchet and Clank stream through PS Plus? It might, I don't know. Or maybe you just emulate it on the Steam Deck or something. But for an official way to play it, it's pretty nice. Also, if you think I'm playing bad, it's because I'm playing through my camera. The delay. Okay, let's try a different game. It's another game that kind of gives a baseline for the performance as Metal Gear Solid. This is a harder game to run. We'll see if it runs any better. Okay, let's see what the performance is like. Getting a solid 30 for now. Let's see. Seems to run decently. Time to go under the tree. I mean, some of the heavier areas of the game, you might get some lag, but I don't remember the controls for this game. It's a fine way experience. I know a lot of people use like grips, which I got like a 3D printed one here. Try it out. Has some sway because it's filament, but overall pretty comfortable. This one like emulates a PS5 controller. Much more comfortable than like having like your hands like up in there. CQC. Okay, yeah, with the grip, it definitely feels a lot better controlling it. I'm all playing with a lot of lag because it's through a camera, but you get the idea. Honestly, I think it's a very valid way to play the game. 60 FPS is nice, but what you can do? You're playing on the go. I think you can get some of those Android devices that run this game at like 60 FPS, similar form factor, but having it on legit hardware, I mean, I guess Steam is legit hardware if you're fine with digital, but owning like a physical Metal Gear Solid HD collection is pretty cool. Why sinking? Oh no. I can shoot a croc. Let's go. Bam. Go to sleep. I mean, like, I also could just play like the collection on my PS4 or PS5 and then Portal to it, but having this on the go is pretty unique. Now, would this be better than like a Steam Deck on the go? Probably not, but you're really in it for the form factor at this point, like just how small it is. Now, the next game I'm going to try that I also own physically is Prinny, Can I Really Be the Hero? One of my old-time favorite games on the PSP. It's a very difficult platform where you play as little Prinnies from Disgaea, and you have 1,000 lives to beat the game. This game's running at 60 FPS and adrenaline. We can also have the adrenaline settings that we were talking about earlier. Go here, we can change all like the bilinear settings, screen scaling and all that. You can also still increase the CPU and GPU overclocking if you so please. And yeah, let's just play a little bit of the game. See how the performance is. This is using the built-in Vita PSP emulator. So generally all the PSP games will run just like perfectly fine. Slash up these little apples. Little piggy. And you just go around and you try not to die. You get like 3 hits per Prinny. All that stuff. Yeah, I haven't really noticed any stuttering at all. That's 60 FPS, baby. I think there's also a plugin for the PSP emulator where you can use your joystick instead of just the D-pad, which would be nice. Adds that functionality into some games. I'll try one of the PS1 games. We're going to try Parasite Eve. One of my favorite classic games of the PlayStation 1. I think the PSP also could play PS1 games, like in the shop, so it's using that sort of system. I think they have like some sort of chip in the Vita and in the PlayStation P, where the PlayStation P, the PSP, to where I could play PlayStation games. Yeah, we're just in here playing Parasite Eve. It's one of my favorite games of this era, like a weird turn-based, like Resident Evil-like game. It's like a turn-based sort of. It's a whole thing. Yeah, and it just runs perfectly. No issues. Dog. Oh no. Let's shoot that dog. Oi. Kind of reminds me of like Tales of Vesperia almost. I don't know. Maybe that's not the best comparison. We leveled up, baby. Dodging all the moves. And yeah, it just works. Adrenaline just works. Next thing we'll take a look at is RetroArch. That front end I was talking about earlier that helps you emulate games. I'm not gonna go too into it, but essentially you can like load a core, which the cores are the different emulators for different devices, and then you can load your content, which is usually like a ROM or equivalent, and you play emulated games. This is just a front end for your Vita to do that. Change some settings, change some scaling, do whatever you want to do, bro. And do whatever you kind of want to do. I'm not entirely sure at what point emulation stops being viable on this system. Like, I think it can get away with like a Game Boy Advance probably, but not like DS. NES games probably work pretty well. N64 maybe, probably not. But Game Boy Advance, NES, SNES probably work nigh perfectly. But anything more powerful than that probably won't work. Yeah, you can just kind of do your thing. Now I'm going to take a look at a specific emulator, which is MGBA. And we're just going to test up a thing. This is Too Many Types. Just a Pokemon Emerald hack. Where all the Pokemon have too many types. I decided to try it on my Vita, because why not? It's super effective. Yeah, it's a very modified Pokemon Emerald. Whole different story. All the Pokemons have so many different types now. Too many, in fact. You can look here. Boring bird. The sound occasionally when going through the transition will lag, but the gameplay seems to be running at like nearly perfect, like no lag. But if you're okay with like a little sound glitch, then this is a very viable way to play something like this. Yeah, I haven't tried any other games, but there may be some ones that don't work. You know, no emulator is actually perfect, but you can at least check it out for yourself. So now on to the conclusion. Is the PlayStation Vita worth it? You can maybe get a PlayStation Vita for $140, maybe less if you do like some Facebook thrifting, or you know somebody who wants to get rid of it. I got mine for around $200 for like a flawless unit, like absolutely perfect unit. And I would say I don't regret it. I think it was worth it for me. Is it worth it for you, however? There's some caveats I would like to go over before we can determine that. So first off, if you want an unmodded Vita, I'm not sure if it's actually worth it. You see, like, I would say most of the Vita games are like $20 to $80, and a lot of the heavy hitters are like $50. You're really spending some money just to play some of these Vita games. On top of the fact you're paying $140, I mean, if you already have a collection, you're doing that whole stuff, then maybe it's worth it for you. If you just want to start a new collection, you're a PlayStation stan, you want to get more PlayStation games in your collection, then the Vita could be cool. They have fun little cases. What about somebody that wants to mod the console? Now, I think the Vita is a very great modded console. PlayStation 1, PSP, and Vita games just run flawlessly on it. I really don't have anything bad to say about it. I mean, just like flawless for the experience. There's a lot of ways just to customize it. You can pretty much do whatever you want on it. Although it is a lower power device compared to like a Steam Deck, a Switch, some of those Android emulation devices. But the form factor is killer. It's very small, and it's one of those devices you could just fit in your pocket, like actually fit in your pocket. You'll probably struggle on emulating some of the more powerful consoles like the Nintendo 64, DS, like Dreamcast, stuff like that. Some of them might not even run at all. So if you want to play that sort of stuff, like maybe even the PlayStation 2, it's definitely not going to emulate that properly. You probably want a higher power device at that point. something closer to a Steam Deck where it can run all those things pretty perfectly. But if you're fine with that, it's a wonderful handheld console. I would say more or less you have to enjoy PlayStation games to buy this console, though. If you don't enjoy the classics, you don't enjoy, some PSP games and PS1 games, you're not going to like it. I mean, whatever. But for me, somebody who, I love Ratchet and Clank, I love Jack, there's a lot of Vita games I've never tried and I want to try. That works for me. PSP games, I love the PSP. There's a lot of fun games like Patapon, Dexter, Dissidia, stuff I could play. And I'm a really huge fan of the PlayStation 1. So this device, to me, is just perfect. This is just like the easiest way to play the PlayStation 1, in my opinion. Just like in bed, don't have to think about much. You can play it for a little bit. And it just works. So overall, I would recommend the Vita to people. But know what you like. I mean, this isn't like a magical device. If you don't like PlayStation games, you're not going to like this console. If you want something more powerful, it's not going to fit those needs. So yeah, definitively, I would recommend the PlayStation Vita. Hope you enjoyed the video. This took a little bit to record. And yeah, talk to you later.